Okay, let's get into the lesson. So today's topics, we will be talking about exotic and endangered animals and plants, just to give you an idea of what kind of really cool things are out there in the world. And then in the next part, you will all be creating your own animals and plants, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. And then finally, you'll also be presenting your different animals and plants that you created. So first of all, let's talk about some exotic and endangered animals and plants, just to give you some inspiration so you can see how diverse and unique the world is. This is just to, get your creative juices flowing so that when it's time for you to create your own animals and plants, maybe you'll think a little bolder just by seeing how many other different animals are out there. So first, I want to talk about the axolotl, or the Mexican walking fish. I know I put a lot of information on, but I just want to give you an idea about how many things or what kind of things you should consider for your animal or plant. So as you can see in the picture, the axolotl is a pretty goofy looking amphibian, um, and you can kind of see it like kind of lives in the water and has these kind of things poking out of his head, and it has kind of like a weird pinkish color. So it's definitely a very unique organism, and it has a lot of interesting properties. So it's an amphibian, just like other like frogs or things or salamanders. This is a type of salamander, and it eats snails, worms, and fish, and then it's eaten by birds or other large fish, and its diet type is carnivorous. Its conservation status is critically endangered, which it means it's beyond just being endangered. It's very, very rare. And then the length is 9.1 inches, so it's less than a foot long. So that's pretty crazy. They're not very big at all. And then the habitat it lives in are still water lakes. So it doesn't like being disturbed, right? It likes very calm, serene habitats, right? So the geographic location that is found in is Mexico City. And these axolotl organisms are actually very rare. So there's not many suitable habitats for it. So you really can only find it around like Mexico City. And its behavior is quite solitary. It likes hiding between rocks and different plant life. And then it's threatened by habitat loss, degradation of habitat, and their habitat is already very limited and scarce. So there's degradation of its existing habitat, which is already scarce. And then it's threatened by pollution from the pollution from Mexico City, which is damaging the water quality. And then also ultraviolet radiation from the sun weakens and makes these axolotls more susceptible to predators and disease. So these are just some facts about one rare organism called the axolotl. Even the name is pretty unique. So this is just to give you some ideas. So start thinking of some ideas for your own animal or plant that you want to create, such as what is it going to eat? What's like a scientific name for it? What is it going to look like? What are its eating patterns going to be like? Okay, and then here's just an example of a unique plant. So this plant is a little scary, and the scientific name is the Dracula simia. And it's called the Dracula simia because it has a face on it that some people think looks like a vampire or like Dracula. Um, but this plant is nicknamed the monkey orchid, and as you can probably tell, it's nicknamed the monkey orchid because it looks like it has a face of a monkey on it. And this is a defensive mechanism for this flower, in order to scare off other predators, because it looks like it's an animal and it can scare off some other predators that it might have. So obviously it's a plant, so it's an autotroph, which means that it makes its own food using photosynthesis and sunlight. And then what eats it? Its predators are like bats and hummingbirds, and its conservation status is delicate. So it's not quite vulnerable and it's not quite endangered, but if some changes are made, the population of monkey orchids could definitely decrease rapidly. And then it's a type of flower essentially, as you can tell. And then its habitat is tropical mountainous, high altitude. And actually, the specific habitat is a cloud forest, which is a very specific type of habitat that's found in like the mountains of Peru and Ecuador, where it's very high up altitude, but it's also warm and like a tropical kind of environment. And then it's threatened by deforestation due to agriculture, logging, human settlement, and cattle grazing. So these are just some quick examples. And then now we will talk about how are you guys going to create your own animals and plants. Okay, so first of all, you guys will all choose a name with a scientific sounding name if you so choose, like Axolotl, right? That's a pretty scientific sounding name. And then you will choose a diet type for your animal, such as herbivore. Remember, if you remember, we learned about herbivores. Those are organisms that eat plants, or carnivores, which are organisms that eat other organisms. And then omnivores, which eat a combination of plants and other animals and organisms. And then autotrophs. So if you choose to do a plant, you choose to do an autotroph, which makes their own food. Okay, and then you also decide what kind of habitat your animal or plant will live in, such as a rainforest, a prairie, a marine habitat, a savanna, an Arctic habitat. You can choose any habitat you would like. And then finally, you'll create a food chain or a food web, such as, if you remember what a food chain or food web is, it was in one of the short videos. Essentially, a food chain is a linear, it's just a straight line. This eats that, which eats that, which eats that, which eats that, right? And then so basically you're going to determine what does your organism eat, right? What does your organism prey on for survival? Or if it's a plant, obviously, then it's just energy from the sun. And then you also determine what eats your organism. What is your organism's predators, right? And then you will determine why your organism is important to its ecosystem. Maybe based off your food chain, you can say if our organism becomes endangered, then the organism that our organism eats will start breeding out of control and will destroy all the trees in the ecosystem. So you can make whatever you want why your organism is important to the ecosystem. And then you also determine threats. Like if your organism lives in a rainforest, then deforestation would be a threat. So you will determine what kind of like man-made or other threats that are dangerous to your animal or plants. And that's related to the previous question, which is why it's important to the ecosystem. So if these threats become out of control, then the ecosystem will be damaged, right? And then you will draw an illustration of your animal or plant. So what does your animal or plant look like? And I will show you a drawing tool that you can use to draw your animals or plants. And then finally, you will come up with a sound for your animal, right? So like cows go moo or whatever. So you create your own sound. Or if you choose to create a plant, you will have to do like an interpretive dance, right? So maybe like for like a seaweed, right? If you do an interpretive dance for a seaweed, it would be like, whoa, I'm a seaweed, right? So because obviously you can't make a sound for a plant. So you can do an interpretive dance instead. So I'm gonna look at your questions now. Let's see. So send your questions to the chat. So some people are asking, how would you create the animal, or like, are the animals going to be made up? So yes, this is your own animal or plant, and you guys will be creating your own animals and plants from scratch, right? So you're gonna create, how does it look, what does it look like, what does it sound like, what does it eat? You're creating everything about this animal or plant. It's all up to you. It's all up to whatever you want to do. using your own creativity. And then someone asked if you can make your animal or plant an invasive species. Yeah, sure, why not? I think understanding uh, invasive species and how other organisms are threats to an ecosystem is also very important. So yeah, sure, feel free if you want to make your organism an invasive species. That seems like all the questions for now. And then, so how are you going to be doing this, right? So you guys will be collaborating. I will put you guys in 5 groups. So you guys will be working on your collaboration skills. And I know you guys haven't interacted with each other that much because it's kind of hard virtually. But this will be a chance for you guys to work together in different teams and work on your teamwork skills. Because you'll see in the scientific field, collaboration is very important. And then feel free to search things up for ideas. Maybe you don't know many types of habitats. You can search on the internet types of habitats, right? Types of food webs for examples. You can search up examples for different food webs or food chains to give you some ideas, right? Or you can search up, oh, what are some different threats to endangered animals to give you some ideas, right? So feel free to use the internet to give you some ideas, but I want you all to create your own animal and plant. So that part has to be your own ideas. And then, yes, so for each group, you will be creating one animal, or you can choose to create a plant. So you can only choose one organism for each group. So you have to work together to decide on what you guys want to do as a team, right? Okay. So I will be assigning you all into breakout rooms in order to do this. And then I will provide you with a link for you to go to create your drawings and also your food web for your organism. So don't worry about writing down this link. I'll give it to you once I assign you into breakout rooms. And then I just want to give you a preview of after you create your animals and plants, you will be presenting it. So I will just pull up the drawings on my screen, and then I want you all during your breakout room session to prepare how you want to present. And keep in mind, everyone in your group must talk at least once. So like maybe one person talks about the habitat they live in. Maybe one person presents the drawing. Maybe one person presents the name, but everyone must talk at least once, okay? And then I will now assign you all to your breakout rooms, and then I will pause the recording.